I'm usually not the type of person to dwell on the past. But after 6 years, the pain still hasn't gone away. I could tell you why, but would you really understand? Not really. Not the way a fan would, at least. But instead of moping around and looking at the Please Make Bloody Roar 5 topic that never seems to disappear from Hudson Soft's forums, despite it being 3 years old, I think it's worth looking back. Seeing not just what went wrong, but what went right. Remembering what the series used to be, and what it could have been. I want you all to hop in the Wayback Machine for a moment and try to remember the year 1997. Bill Clinton started serving his second term as president. Notorious Big was murdered, but still had 2 songs in the top 25. The Indians lost the World Series. Again. Kagome kicked off the Inuyasha series by going down a well.
And we're sending our love down the well. All the way down.
And most importantly to this video, arcades were still alive. I mean on their own, outside of Chuck E. Cheese and Dave & Buster's. The one I grew up with was called Aladdin's Castle, and they had everything you could ask for, especially if you were into fighting games. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Killer Instinct, Samurai Showdown, Virtua Fighter, King of Fighters, all of them were there.
But there's one game that they never had, a game that I have yet to see in real life. Beastorizer.
First released in Japanese arcades in July of 1997, Beastorizer was an unusual release at its time for a couple of reasons. For one, its developers. Rising, a company that until this time had primarily made shoot-'em-up titles, and Hudson Soft. At this time, Hudson had already established themselves as a solid developer with titles like Bonk's Adventure, the Adventure Island series, and the Bomberman series, just to name a few. Still, the closest things Hudson made to a fighting game before Beastorizer were Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu and Balloon Fight, unless you want to count them publishing the first Art of Fighting game.
What could possibly go wrong? I mean, it's not like you're trying to get in on the fighting game genre when it was already considered to have peaked and titles like Tekken, Dead or Alive, and Soul Edge have already soaked up most of your target audience. Right?
Still, the game somehow managed to earn a console port to the PlayStation later that year under the name Bloody Roar, or Bloody Roar Hyper Beast Duel for you across the pond folk. It eventually came out in March of 1998, and, perhaps anticipating release date competition, this ad was shot and aired in Japan.
And so began the stereotype that Bloody Roar fans are furries.
Actually, there was an ad in the US too, but it's, well, just watch.
It's so real. I turn into a tiger. Claws ripping flesh. Or a gorilla. I'm freaking out, man. Or a wolf. What do you think, Doc?
Humans can turn into animals.
What are you looking at, nut boy? PlayStation.
Honestly, is this the best way you could think of to advertise a fast-paced fighting game that barely takes itself seriously? Combining the awesome advertising forces of David Lynch and the stoner demographic?
Forget it, I'm not here to look at the ads. I'm here to look at the game.
Bloody Roar focuses on a group of people called zoanthropes, humans capable of transforming themselves into half-animal hybrids which are far stronger and faster than human beings. The animal forms they turn into tend to be a reflection of their character's appearance and personality. How does this work?
I don't know. No, really, the game does a terrible job explaining this. And if you look at the instruction booklet, all you're going to find is this.
As the 20th century draws to a close, the world is filled with darkness and fear. 8 mysterious warriors appear, all displaying superhuman strength, astounding athletic ability, and the power to morph into raging, half-human beasts. Tigers, wolves, wild boars. Will mankind depend on the claws, fangs, and cunning of savage beasts to bring the world safely into the next millennium?
As the first game in the series, Bloody Roar doesn't do a good job explaining anything about zoanthropes. Their origins, their relationship with humanity, why they exist at all. But who needs to establish stuff like that, you know? I mean, it's not like this is information that's crucial to the game's story.
There is further information on the story, if you know where to look. It was posted on the official site for the game on PlayStation.com, and has since been reposted on sites like BloodyRoar.net. Why not put it in the instruction book? It's not like you didn't have room for it. In the latter half of the 20th century, burgeoning population and the rapid development of technology have affected the Earth's environment in various ways.
Oh good, the prologue was written by Greenpeace.
Humans, who once gave birth to a flourishing civilization, are heading for collapse. Earth is exposed to serious damage through the self-destructive acts of mankind, which is itself a part of the Earth.
By the way, how much does the environment figure into the plot for this game? Okay, how about for the entire series? Yeah, that's what I thought.
It turns out that zoanthropes are the result of the stimulation of a certain strain of genetic code that was previously thought to have been a background anomaly because it failed to match any human characteristic, and that by activating this code, the characteristics and capabilities of other species latent in the human body can be awakened and give birth to beings with superhuman physical powers and agility.
And here's where I give Hudson, or at least whoever came up with this idea, a little credit.
While more recent research has since shown that the idea of unused or quote-unquote junk DNA is quite wrong, the idea still works because even though geneticists know it is used, they still aren't entirely sure what certain parts of the genetic code are for. Also, research has shown that there are a great deal of traits shared by humans and certain other animals on the genetic level. Obviously, there are a great amount of genetic similarities between humans and various types of monkeys and apes, but the numbers are high for others as well. While exact figures are still debatable, cats share about 90% of the same genes as humans, and dogs share roughly 85%.
And here's a shocker, several of the characters in the Bloody Roar series are some form of dog or cat, including half of the characters in this game. Long, Hugo, Gatto, and Fox.
And by the way, Fox, was that really the best name they could have given him? Why not just use his real name, Hans? I mean, that's like calling Scorpion and Sub-Zero Fire and Ice, or calling Jax Token Black Guy.
Still, scientists have yet to prove that people can turn into half-animal fighting machines, or that they can spontaneously regenerate their destroyed clothes when they become human again. And thus concludes, crap, I have to get out of the way so I can talk about the damn game!
To sum up the rest of this, zoanthropes had been living in secrecy until a massive amount of them started showing up around the world. It turns out that the medical division of the multinational Tylon Corporation, Tyron Corporation, or is it Tyrone? The game spells it at least 3 different ways.
Hudson, now translate for Glory Good Great Justice Battery!
Tylon has been breeding, kidnapping, and training zoanthropes to form an army which they would use to, stop me if you've heard this one before,
try to take over the world.
An evil global corporation creating biological weapons! Quick! Shoot them in the head! Oh wait, they're not zombies. Shoot them in the head!
Each character, of which there are 8, has their own reasons to either escape from, fight against, or support the Tylon Corporation. The main storyline in the game is that Yugo Ogami's father Yuji, a mercenary by trade, went missing during a battle against an ambushing group of heavily armed soldiers and zoanthropes. Gatto, a friend of Yuji and the only other survivor of the battle, searches for his whereabouts as both he and Yugo end up fighting against Tylon. The other key storyline is that Mitsuko's daughter has been kidnapped and she's on a quest to find her. The daughter is the same person who sacrificed herself to help Alice escape the research facility before she could be brainwashed. The other three characters, Fox, Buckaroo, and Long, are all members of a unit within the corporation that handles all combat exercises, such as kidnappings and assassinations. While Buckaroo and Fox enjoy their work, Long, who views his zoanthrope abilities as a curse, leaves the group and refuses to return. He is branded a traitor and the group comes after him.
Now you may be asking yourself, where does Greg fit into all of this? Well, he doesn't. He's scouting the world looking for zoanthropes so that he can pump them up and get them to join his circus troupe since the one he was in before went bankrupt.
As the odd man out of the game, it's not too surprising that this is the only Bloody Roar title he appeared in, despite having one of the better zoanthrope forms and being the very definition of a power character, since his wind-up punch, if charged all the way, is basically a one-hit kill.
Oh, and the massive hulking brute who isn't all that bright but means well with everything he does? He's the token American character. Thanks, Japan!
Speaking of stereotypes, try and guess the nationality of Fox, the insane assassin obsessed with beauty who's so girly in his appearance and fighting style that he was not only voiced by a woman, but listed as female in the European version. The game itself is a surprisingly well done port which, at the time, got high praise in particular for, of all things, its frame rate. It seems a bit silly by today's standards, but in the mid to late 90s, finding a game for the PlayStation that could run at a smooth, high frame rate consistently wasn't that easy. The few inconsistencies between the console version and the original arcade game were some additional modes of play in time attack, survival, and practice, extra unlockables, and the bizarre decision to make Greg look like this, when in the arcade version he was
A black man!
One thing I always found a bit jarring was how the game could never decide what art style to go for. The character art is all drawn, as is one of the arcade menus, but in the cutscenes and introductions, everyone's computer-generated. For the most part, the characters weren't translated very well to their CG equivalents. Fortunately, their in-game models, both in human and beast form, looked pretty good and moved smoothly, even when performing some of their more bizarre or acrobatic moves.
When you talk about Bloody Roar's combat, you're going to hear two criticisms that get echoed throughout the series. Number one, the game is a button masher. And number two, the beast forms are gimmicky. I wouldn't even consider these criticisms really so much as casual observations of a fighting game in general, and here's why.
In all the fighting games I've ever played, I have yet to see one where button mashing wasn't a usable strategy, even if a bad one. Of course if you mash buttons you'll luck out and do either a special move or a combo. It's a dumbed down way of saying that a room full of monkeys chained to typewriters will eventually reproduce Shakespeare. The main reason people say this about Bloody Roar is, well, look at what the arcade version's controls look like. Bloody Roar has a very simplified fighting system, with one button each for punch, kick, and beast transformation. Most of the characters will do a combo of anywhere from 2 to 5 hits just by tapping punch or kick repeatedly, and any special attacks can be done by doing quarter circle forward or backward and either punch, kick, or beast. But being able to do longer combos means not only switching between punch and kick and the directions held while hitting them, but also the incorporation of these special moves. In other words, this takes practice. It's simple enough for anyone to pick up and play, but has enough complexity to it that someone who knows what they're doing can dispatch a button masher, especially for a character like Long, who uses combo circles that can start, end, loop back, and branch off in numerous different patterns.
And as for the beast form being a gimmick, yeah, it pretty much is a gimmick. In the same way that Soul Calibur or Battle Reno Toshinden's gimmick is weapon-based combat, or Bushido Blades is realistic combat, or Mortal Kombat's excessive gore, or Dead or Alive's is a counter button, or Rival Schools is team-based attacks, or Marvel vs. Capcom's is being able to switch characters in the middle of a fight, or Tekken's is a laughably bad storyline even by fighting game standards. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Besides, the beast form, in addition to being at the root of the story, offers several key advantages, such as being able to regenerate a small chunk of health, being able to jump higher, unless you're Greg, being heavier and therefore harder to knock into the air and get juggled by your opponent. In spite of all this though, use of the beast form has to be timed carefully. If you transform right away, your beast form will only be strong enough to last for a few hits before you need to revert back. Once you're in human form again, you need to fill the beast bar all the way before being able to transform at all. And once you can, you'll want to wait until the beast energy bar is filled to be able to stay in beast form longer. Shifting into beast form also acts as a short-range radial attack, so it can function as a way to fend off opponents who have dodged your initial attack or are trying to start a combo. There's also Rave Mode, which can be turned on or off from the main menu, which makes the beast form faster moving and severely reduces any delays between attacks. As a trade-off, the beast bar reduces slowly over time, and when it runs out, the fighter shifts back to human form.
In short, there's a lot more to the beast form than some people are willing to admit, especially in terms of strategy. Although it does lead to one question that critics and fans alike have been unable to answer to this very day. Why do the ladies' beast forms have boobs?
Oh, I don't know. I mean... You don't know?
I've pretty much covered regular combat except for a few things. First of all, blocking. Instead of having a block button or just holding back to block, there's a light guard and a heavy guard. Light guard is active all the time unless you're holding forward and can block regular attacks. Heavy guard, like the name suggests, blocks stronger attacks, but attacks capable of breaking through the guard will send a player stumbling backwards briefly. One of blocking's most important aspects, though, is the guard escape. If you're in heavy guard, and then you press forward, you can sidestep an opponent's attack and get off a special move or combo on them. Actually, the instruction book says to press up, but I got it to work by hitting forward, so maybe it's another translation error. That and there's an option to turn on sidestepping, but it's off by default, and I tend to leave it that way. Throws, for lack of their own button, are done by hitting punch and kick at the same time. There are different throws to perform based on whether the opponent is standing or ducking, and whether you're in front of them or behind them. You can also move around before the fight actually begins, and sometimes get in a throw on your opponent as the match starts. This sounds cheap, and it is, which is probably why when the difficulty ramps up toward the end of each mode, the opponent avoids it much more often. Quite frankly, I'm surprised the computer doesn't catch on to this and attack first earlier.
Man to man, mano a mano, toe to toe, nose to nose.
One of the things I enjoyed the most about the game was the music, composed by Takayuki Negishi, who also composed the music of... Okay... The instrumental rock tracks arranged for each character can be a little bland in some cases, particularly with Long's theme. But for characters like Fox and Alice, their music really adds to the intensity of the fights.
Get ready, fight!
In fact, my only major complaint sound-wise is that Alice's voice is mind-numbingly annoying! Most of the game plays out through arcade mode, in which the player fights through 9 stages against all 8 fighters, including themselves. The difficulty progression here operates on a curve. The first few fights are easy to get through, even when you're still learning the controls, but the last couple fights require, at the very least, comfort with the controls and some ability to read your opponent's moves and properly manage your beast form. Beating arcade mode with each character and doing various other things, like making it through 10 rounds of survival mode or clearing time attack in 10 minutes, unlocks different cheats and mods such as turning off walls or disabling human and beast forms, as well as unlocking cinematics and artwork. Among these are illustrations of the characters, as well as concept art for both them and characters who didn't make the final cut. I always find it a little weird looking at art of characters that never came to fruition. It's like looking at the tombstone of someone who never existed.
Wait a minute. I said that there were 8 fighters in the game, but there's 9 levels in arcade mode. Who else is there? Oh, some little girl in a Tylon lamp? Why the hell am I fighting? Oh shit, shoot him in the head!
Meet the final boss, Oriko, a girl who was kidnapped, brainwashed, and experimented on to unlock the incredible power of her zoanthrope form, which is apparently a combination of mutated barbecue spare ribs and a cat girl from outer space. Either way, she's fast, powerful, and has her own lightning-laden moveset on top of borrowing a few moves from other characters. Oh, and she's Mitsuko's daughter.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Mitsuko, stop! You're gonna beat up your own daughter? You aren't even going to attempt to talk to her? Maybe see if you could break through the brainwashing? Never mind.
And so Mitsuko rescues her daughter and their lives return to normal. Riko, wake up or you'll be late for school!
Please, Eriko, get out of bed before she gives you the five-finger alarm clock!
And unfortunately, that would be the last time Mitsuko showed up as a playable character in the series.
And remember, kids, as of 1998, if you're a girl, you need to be at least this attractive to be in a fighting game.
I don't want to go over all of the endings for this video, but I will go over some of the more important ones. Yugo, the face of the Bloody Roar franchise, fights his way into the Tylon labs along with Gato, learning that his father was kept there. Unfortunately, Gato wasn't able to rescue him in time, and Yuji dies off-screen. Yugo vows to destroy all of his father's enemies with the abilities he inherited from Yuji, and fade to black. Meanwhile, Gato destroys the very small-looking Tylon lab while screaming about avenging his friend Yuji. I'm sorry, but is this really the best shot they can think of for this? You know what, screw it, I'll just make the joke and move on. Yuji! I avenged you! Gato is arrested for destroying the building, but later let go because the police find the labs and tons of evidence of all the illegal experiments performed there. Unable to shake his soldier mentality, Gato returns to the armed forces and keeps fighting in memory of his friend.
Not to sound condescending, but how desperate is this military if they're taking a guy who can't see out of his left eye?
Long, however, is seen meditating by a waterfall having an emo trip about being a zoanthrope. In a strange bit of dialogue, his zoanthrope form starts talking to him. Against its claims, Long determines that his destiny is to live alone in a cave so people won't live in fear of him.
This is, of course, a flawless plan, except for the countless other zoanthropes in the world for people to be afraid of. Turn that frown upside down and kick some half-human ass!
The last one I'll mention is my personal favorite, Fox's ending. He's doing his usual work of maiming and killing innocent people when one of them, an older woman he's mortally wounded, says his real name as she's dying. Wait, Hans? I thought his name was Hans.
Hudson Stew, the translator down to all!
Fox shows remorse over killing his own mother before slowly descending into madness, which isn't saying much since he was already a murderous psychopath before this happened.
Still, think of the possibilities this opens up for his character. With Tylon gone, he's basically unemployed and can do whatever the hell he wants. He could come back for any one of these characters, especially since the game does everything but flat out tell you, Fox kidnapped Eriko. You know what? I can't wait. Let's just see what happens to him in the next game. Hudson, I am disappointed.
Looking back, it can be a little difficult to imagine that this game managed to compete at all with the numerous other fighters out at the time, but in spite of its flaws, it did just that. Considering how Hudson in the same year released another fighter, Dual Heroes, a game frequently brought up in the argument for worst N64 game, what success Bloody Roar had could be classified as a pleasant surprise.
In fact, they would go on to make a sequel to this game only a year later, which expanded the... Damn it! In fact, they would go on to make a sequel to this game a year later, which expanded the... Well, this is a little awkward. The script just ends there. Oh look, credits! The